Welcome everyone to this Excel macros tutorial. I'm very excited to share this knowledge with you, and I'm looking forward for you to saving a lot of your time and transforming a 1 hour job into a one-click job anytime soon. The objective of this first tutorial is to get you started with recorded macros and as well for you to create a very useful macro that will help you with every Excel file. And finally, stay tuned because at the end, I will show you a bit of the code and we will do some little twist for big results. Now, it's okay if you just want to follow along, but in order for this tutorial to be very effective, I recommend that you follow along and as well perform all these steps together with me in the same workbook. And feel free to connect with me on YouTube so that I can send you the file if you don't have it already, or check out my Excel macros class. I'll put the details in the description of this video. Alright, let's now have a look at the data that we have on hand. So what are the tasks that you normally perform with a data like this? I guess you'll do a bit of formatting because it's personally what I would do because I don't see here the numbers and so on. So what I do is I select here the header and then make it bold, and I want to see the columns. I auto fit them as well. I will put a filter on the first one, so I think this it's now much better looking for me. And this is a kind of action that I think me and you could perform with every Excel file that we receive in this form. All right, but wouldn't it be great for us that instead of performing all these three actions or more, um, that we have a button and we can do all this in one click? So for example, this is the initial state and we can do everything like this. That would be just great, right? So this is something that we can achieve with a recorded macro. And this is what we'll start to do right now. And let's go back to the original format of the file and I'll walk you through the steps. Now feel free at any step to pause this video and perform the task in Excel and then come back to video. That will not influence the code at all. Alright, so what we want to do now is to start recording the macro. And the first option is with view macros, but we will not be using this one. And actually there is a better, because there is a better way. And this is by making visible the developer tab on your ribbon. And you do that by going to the right here and you right click, select customize the ribbon, and you just find the developer tab. In the main tabs, you tick it and you click OK. And now we have a very powerful tab in order for us to work with the macros in the future. And what you need to remember, this is the code. Right here you can see, and this is the best option to access the code. And you have the shortcut, and these are all the macros that are available, and this is the shortcut. So I think it's important for you to remember the shortcut for the future in as well. So now we have the record macro button here, and let's start recording. So we will be giving a name and make sure that you don't have any spaces like this because the macro will not work. You will get an error message. So the common practice is to put an underscore. My favorite format. I think it's a good title. All right, we store, don't worry about the shortcut key. We store this macro. Have 3 options. New workbook, nobody uses this, so we actually have 2 options. Now this workbook, if we plan to use it only here, but we don't, and the personal macro workbook is the best option for us because we want to use this macro and do the format in one click for many other files as well. All right, we click on OK, and now we start the recording. In order to stop recording, you have the button here, this one, and you can start recording at any time. All right, so the macro doesn't record the time, before between two operations, and on the other hand, it does record all the clicks. So the best practice is to take your time and try to avoid all the unnecessary clicks and scrolling so that you don't make the code harder to read and the macro is, could potentially not be working so fast. The steps are very simple. Again, I select A1 to I1. Remember this because I already have this selection and this is fixed. You will see in the macro. Bold, select the columns. You have here the plus, double click to autofit, go to data, put the filter. So were you able to follow along? Hopefully yes. Feel free to stop the video, do the steps and come back. If not, and finally, we just stop the macro recording and apparently nothing happened, right? So there is no change, but have some faith in the background. This macro is saved and we can use it. And I will show you. Let's test it. So we go back to initial state. So now we need to find the macro and I'll show you before. We can go to developer tab where we have all our macros. But before running the macro, you need to make sure that you have some kind of a backup. And here we already have a similar worksheet. And because once you run the macro, there will be no undo button. And let's see. Macros, my favorite format, run it. It worked just wonders. I don't have any undo. So make sure you have your copy of the worksheet or of the file before running the macro. In case anything goes wrong, it's a good practice to have a backup. All right, so now there is a limitation and we want to overcome that. And it's the fact that we used a specific selection and the macro is recording exactly as it is told. So we'll stop doing all the tasks up to I1. Okay, so let me show you and you'll see this visually here where we have a different tab and we have more columns. There is one more column that it's not formatted with bold and it's not out of fitted. So now when I run the macro here, yeah, it does the job for from A to I, but J is left out because it's not part of what I recorded, right? So if I go to the code, which is developer, Visual Basic, the best way to see the code, and now we have to search it a bit. It's not right away. So then what we have here is a file, but we didn't save it in the file. So we have the personal LXSB where we saved, and the macros are always in a module. So here, like for example, this macro is in module 2. So search here, it's a bit of a search. And since we are here, you can see for the first time maybe the code. So don't get scared. I think if you are operating with Excel for quite a while, it's quite logical. You will find a lot of keywords that you use in Excel, and there is range, there is select, there is bold. So can you tell me what this instruction does? So this is making the font bold for the range, and in order for this to work for a larger number of columns, we can manually change this I1 to a really bigger reference, say on the right. So we can put, for example, DA, right? So now this is A1 up to DA1 bold, and the columns, we just select as well DA so that we can make the auto fit there. So don't worry, there is a bit of repeating code. We are not now concerned of cleaning up the code. And this one I want to keep as such. So now I can save. And let's see if we did everything correctly. Finally, we go back. And let's run this now here, and we should have a difference for the column J. Okay, but I think now uh, the filter was removed because it was a filter before. So now if we didn't have the filter, then it should have been put here. Maybe we can use the macro again. And now we have the filter as well there available. Now I hope you understand these are just a couple of examples, just 3 actions that I took for you to be clear. What are the actions that you do in every file? Maybe you have a different font that you're using for the entire file. So maybe you don't use Calibri, but another font that is in your organization. Or maybe instead of going and doing the auto fit like this, you have much more columns and you just prefer to right click and do a specific column with and to have, for example, 25 or less shown there. But my point is, think about the actions that you do and include them into a new macro. So do all these 3 steps if you like them and they are having value to you, and add your own actions so that you can create a macro that works every time for you in every situation. So now the final test is I use this macro in different tabs. I want to test it if it's working in a different file. So I can twist a bit this one just to be clear. This is a file that it's not actually saved as a macro enable workbook. And we can go to developer macros, run it, and it works just fine. All right, in the next tutorials, we will be exploring a way to solve all the issues with the data that comes as text, but it should be a number with a green triangle here on the left side, and as well the issues with the date. We will be transforming all this in one click and in the best possible way. So stay tuned, and I hope to see you in the next lesson.